There are people who earn well for a season and then lose everything. Others never experience dramatic increase, yet remain stable for decades. Scripture does not treat this difference as accidental. It presents it as structural. The Bible does not ask whether money can be gained. It asks whether money can be kept. Short-term increase is common. Long-term protection is rare. This is why Scripture speaks far more about wisdom than about wealth, because money without protection does not last, and protection is not automatic. Throughout the Bible, resources are shown responding to order. When order is present, money settles. When order is violated, money escapes. These principles do not operate loudly. They do not announce themselves. They work quietly, consistently, and over time. The first principle concerns authority. Scripture consistently shows that money must remain under governance. When money governs decisions, instability follows. When God governs decisions, money becomes manageable. This principle appears early and often. Whenever people elevated wealth above God, fear entered. Anxiety increased, decisions narrowed. Money was never designed to lead. It was designed to serve. Scripture records that when God remained first, provision followed without sorrow. When that order was reversed, even abundance became fragile. This principle protects money because it stabilizes decision-making. Money stops reacting to emotion. It begins responding to order. The second principle concerns boundaries. The Bible repeatedly establishes limits around resources. Limits on consumption, limits on accumulation, limits on obligation. These boundaries were not meant to restrict growth. They were meant to prevent collapse. Scripture shows that when boundaries were ignored, resources drained quickly. When boundaries were respected, provision endured. Money without boundaries expands until it collapses. Boundaries create sustainability. This principle protects money quietly because it prevents erosion. Loss rarely arrives suddenly. It arrives gradually through ignored limits. The third principle concerns stewardship over ownership. Scripture rarely frames people as owners. It frames them as stewards. A steward manages with accountability. An owner consumes with assumption. The Bible records that stewards who managed carefully were entrusted with more. Those who treated resources as personal entitlement lost what they had. This principle protects money because it changes posture. Money is handled deliberately rather than emotionally. Stewardship introduces responsibility. Responsibility introduces caution. Caution preserves stability. The fourth principle concerns order of allocation. Scripture repeatedly emphasizes sequence. What comes first determines what follows. In biblical households, the first portion was set aside intentionally, not after expenses, not after comfort, but first. This was not symbolic. It was structural. When the order was correct, money stabilized. When the order was reversed, pressure increased. This principle protects money by preventing reaction. Allocation becomes intentional rather than defensive. Money flows more predictably when sequence is respected. The fifth principle concerns patience over speed. Scripture consistently warns against haste, not because effort is wrong, but because speed without structure destroys protection. Solomon observed that haste leads to poverty, not immediately, but eventually. Fast gains are difficult to protect. Slow growth is easier to sustain. This principle protects money because it reduces exposure. Risk increases with speed. Protection requires patience. Scripture favors endurance over acceleration. At this point, the pattern is already visible. Authority stabilizes. Boundaries preserve. Stewardship governs. Sequence orders. Patience protects. But Scripture goes further. Protection is not only about how money is handled. It is also about how pressure is managed. That leads to the next principle. The sixth principle concerns pressure management. Scripture shows that unaddressed pressure erodes protection. When financial pressure increases, decisions compress. Compressed decisions introduce error. Error exposes money. The Bible repeatedly records moments where pressure led to poor choices. People sold long-term inheritance to solve short-term discomfort. They sacrificed stability to escape urgency. Protection requires space. Space allows discernment. Discernment preserves resources. This principle protects money because it slows reaction. It prevents decisions made under fear. Scripture consistently shows that wisdom operates best when pressure is restrained. The seventh principle concerns counsel and confirmation. The Bible does not present success as solitary, it presents it as guided. Solomon observed that plans succeed with counsel, not with applause, not with affirmation, with correction. Scripture shows that isolated decisions expose money. Unchallenged assumptions compound error. Wise counsel interrupts blind spots. This principle protects money because it introduces perspective. Perspective reveals risk before loss occurs. Those who reject counsel often move faster. Those who receive counsel move safer. The eighth principle concerns simplicity over complexity. Scripture consistently favors clarity, not complication. When systems became complex, people lost oversight. Loss of oversight produced misuse. Misuse produced collapse. Simple systems are easier to protect. They are easier to manage. They are harder to exploit. This principle protects money by reducing points of failure. Complexity multiplies vulnerability. Simplicity preserves control. Scripture shows that sustainable households operated with clear structures and understandable limits. The ninth principle concerns separation of provision and identity. The Bible consistently separates who a person is from what they possess. When identity attaches to money, protection weakens. Scripture records leaders whose wealth became their identity. When the wealth shifted, they collapsed internally and externally. Money tied to identity invites fear. Fear invites reaction. Reaction destroys protection. This principle protects money because it removes emotional leverage. Money becomes a tool, not a mirror. Scripture shows that those who held resources lightly handled them more wisely. The 10th principle concerns long-term faithfulness. Protection is not achieved once, it is maintained. The Bible does not describe protection as a moment. It describes it as repetition. Small compromises weaken protection. Small disciplines strengthen it. Scripture shows that neglect accumulates quietly. So does faithfulness. This principle protects money because it compounds restraint, wisdom, and discipline across time. At this point, the structure becomes clear. Authority governs money. Boundaries limit exposure. Stewardship introduces accountability. Order stabilizes flow. Patience reduces risk. Pressure management preserves clarity. Counsel corrects error. Simplicity reduces vulnerability. Identity separation removes fear. Faithfulness sustains protection. Scripture does not frame these as techniques. It records them as observations. Those who ignored these principles experienced erosion, even with abundance. Those who practiced them experienced stability, even without excess. This explains why some fortunes disappear quickly, and why modest provision can endure for generations. Money is not protected by volume. It is protected by order. The Bible does not promise that wealth will always increase. It shows that protection is always available to those who apply wisdom. Protection is quiet. It is rarely noticed in the moment. But over time, it becomes unmistakable. This is why Scripture places greater value on wisdom than on wealth. Wealth comes and goes. Wisdom preserves what remains. The principles have not changed. The outcomes remain consistent. Protection is not accidental, it is applied. And Scripture records that those who understand this do not merely gain money. They keep it.